In today's episode, Abby asks, what are the most effective PR strategies we should be looking at? That's a bit broad. Here is the PR strategy, the one that is timeless, that is effective, that is pretty much as close to guaranteed as you can get. Have news worth sharing. That's it. Have news worth sharing. It's simple and it's difficult. Because most of the time, we don't have news worth sharing. Most of the time, we have things that aren't even news, right? Oh, look, we changed our logo, or so-and-so got promoted, or we won a new client. These are all things that are important to us as business owners or as managers or executives or whatever. But nobody cares. That's not news. That's boring, right? News is something that is new and that is remarkable, meaning that is worth remarking about. Seth Godin's old quote, you have to be remarkable. If no one's talking about it, it's not news. Here's an easy one, especially if you've got a decent number of employees. Go and wherever it is your employees congregate and hang out, right? And it's the water cooler, the cafeteria, whatever. Could be online too, monitoring employees' social media, anything that they post publicly, and see what they talk about naturally. I guarantee you, it's not about your company. It's not about the press release you just put out or the story that you just put on your blog, whatever. If you can't even get your own people to care, why is anyone else going to care? So you've got to have news worth sharing. Now, what is news worth sharing? Well, it can be anything that really is beneficial to your audience. And your products and services generally are not going to be beneficial in a newsworthy way. They may be beneficial, but they're not news because they're not new. So that can be things like a study or some research you did. It can be a qualitative piece of information. It can be an interview with somebody who isn't involved in your company, some sort of minor celebrity or industry person. It can be a trend in your overall industry that has suddenly changed. A lot of people were able to make a decent amount of news earlier this year when the pandemic hit, and there were a lot of good and also a lot of not so good pieces on how the pandemic was going to change certain industries. That's news. That's useful. That's interesting. That's worth talking about. It's remarkable. And that's what you have to do on a regular, frequent basis if you want to have an effective public relations strategy. In theory, this is why people pay agencies, because agencies, in theory, have more practice at doing this sort of thing than some folks in-house. That's not necessarily true. Agencies are as wide and varied in quality as any other industry, as any other business. There'll be some good ones. There'll be a whole bunch of mediocre ones. There'll be some bad ones. So the biggest challenge for you is to figure out whether this agency is any good at what they do or not. And some companies inherently just have more news than others, right? And when there is news, they know how to push all the right buttons. Nobody really has to work all that hard at generating news. If you work at like Tesla or SpaceX, right? You literally are doing new stuff. And yes, you have to do the effort of reaching out and letting news media know that you're doing this thing, but the news itself is newsworthy. It is remarkable. That's the bench test. If your people, or even you yourself, if you happen to be in a some kind of relationship, is what you're about to write a news release or do a news campaign about so interesting and fascinating and exciting to you that you're talking about it to your friends, your significant other, or whoever, unprompted, right? It's just so exciting that it's worth talking about. Then you've got something. If, on the other hand, you're working on something and you can't even bother to bring it up to your significant other at the end of the day, it's probably not newsworthy. And therefore, it's going to be a much harder story to make happen. There are fewer news outlets now than there ever used to be for, at least a decade. We were doing some data research recently for Business Wire and found that there were 85,000 domain names, unique domain names in news stories back in 2015, and we're down like 30-ish thousand now. So you've seen a substantial contraction in the number of news outlets available. So one of the things that you have to do tactically is become a news outlet, become a publisher, have a very large mailing list and a large readership or a large YouTube channel or something that gives you reach into your audience, because you are the news at that point. So many industries, particularly this year, have run into really hard times in terms of being able to maintain their business operations, that we've seen a dramatic decline in the number of functioning news outlets. This is a long-term trend, so you have to become the news. So tactically, what can you do to build a media property that is a publisher that you then can share your news in? Plenty of companies have done this. Plenty of companies have become so large and so powerful in their media operations that they're effectively like separate companies. But the advantage is you don't have to pitch anybody. You don't have to squeeze your news in or ask an editor to approve your story. It's your outlet, so you have control over it. That's a big part of making news work for you today, is you have to become the news. And that is something that companies overlook a lot. So do that to the extent that you can. It's an investment. You're talking probably 2 to 3 year investment, at least. Significant ad dollars, significant marketing technology dollars to build, for example, a newsletter and run it well, notification systems, marketing and remarketing by text message, retargeting ads that run on search, that run on YouTube. Expect to spend, depending on how large you need it to be and how large your industry is, anywhere from 5 to 7 digits, right, on building that outlet so that you become the de facto news source for your industry. And then you don't have to worry a whole lot about having to run a public relations operation separately, because at that point you are the news. But that's it at the core. The challenge is, most of the times, most of what we have to share is not news. And therefore, it's not going to resonate. It's going to be very, very difficult to pitch. And with fewer reporters and journalists out there, it becomes really difficult to get their attention for anything. So what you're pitching has to be really news. We could spend a whole lot more time on this, but if you have follow-up questions, leave them in the comments box below. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and the newsletter. I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Want help solving your company's data, analytics, and digital marketing problems? Visit trustinsights.ai today and let us know how we can help you.